All right, welcome to the New Mexico Fit Life Podcast. My name is Jack, and I'm taking you on a journey to explore all things fitness, wellness, and mindset related in our beautiful land of enchantment. My very first guest in this podcast, Markus Podell, is not only the president of the National Veterans Wellness and Healing Center located in Angel Fire, New Mexico. He's an artist, he's a horse whisperer, he's a volunteer for the New Mexico Wildlife Center, a veteran, a life coach, but most importantly, I consider him to be a good friend. And even though he's slightly younger than me, I consider him to be a mentor. Welcome to the podcast, Markus.
I appreciate you having me, Jack. Always good to see you, brother.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on here. I know you were busy with the legislative session recently, so you're probably a little tired. So I'll try to make this as enjoyable as possible.
No, this is a highlight of the week, I can promise.
Awesome. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump right in. Tell me a little bit about Markus Podell. Who are you, and how'd you get into this field of work?
Well, I live in Angel Fire. I've been here for about 10 years almost. I'm a U.S. Army veteran. I served 12 years in the U.S. Army, deployed to Bosnia, Kosovo, and multiple times in support of the global war on terrorism. I was injured in Iraq and eventually medically separated from my injuries. Got out and worked as a teacher for high risk behavior intervention children. Worked at Bell Helicopter for a while. And like most veterans, after I kind of hit the streets and took off the uniform for a while, I sort of stumbled around a little lost and, you know, didn't really have a new mission, if you will. And so eventually in 2016, after I'd already kind of done some personal work, I had stumbled upon this organization that you'd referred to, the National Veterans Wellness and Healing Center in Angel Fire. And my wife and I attended. I, as a veteran, have been diagnosed with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and traumatic brain injury. And so I understand, some of the challenges that can create in life after we exit service, and it doesn't mean that it's a death sentence that we can't get to where we're going. It just simply means that it might be a different route to get there. And so that was sort of my route. I ended up here, eventually had an opportunity to come back and kind of give back. And like I said, I've dedicated about the last 10 years of my life doing it, and I love it, man. It's been my new missions. I think every time you help another veteran, you kind of get another piece of yourself back and some new perspective. And so, doing this work makes you keep your own toolkit pretty sharp. So, again, to me, it's just, I'm grateful to live a life of purpose again.
That's awesome, man. I know I've known you for about a year and a half, and you are one of the most sincere people I've ever met in my life. When you talk to veterans, I feel it. And I know they feel it too because I've been around other veterans you've talked to. And so this is something that, in my view, something that you were meant to do on this earth. And I'm grateful I had an opportunity to meet you. I know
Yeah,
that's wonderful.
I appreciate it. Sometimes the mental health field picks you, you know. Um, a lot of us that get into this are, we're tired of suffering. For me, my mental health journey started, my mom passed away from suicide when I was 16. And, I don't know that I always learned the best coping tools. And so recently, my dad passed away in November, and he's probably one of the most important people in my life. And so I'm really grateful for this 10-year journey that I've had where I could kind of understand what I've been through and more importantly, let go so that I don't have to just drag all of that, and keep accumulating it. And so I'm finally getting in that point in my life where I feel like I'm back up to par, I'm letting stuff go as soon as I'm pulling it on. And that's kind of the trick to life. So I don't have all of the answers, but I tell you this, Jack, and you know this, if somebody gets in front of me and they're struggling, I'll sit there and listen with you and we'll find the answer together, man. And I think that's probably one of the most important things is, don't get into this field if you don't care about people. I personally know what it's like to be a 16-year-old kid and to be suffering and people around me say, hey, sorry about your luck, man. I got nothing to offer you. And as a man and as a parent, I just swore, I swore that my kids would never have to go through that same thing that I had to go through. So, part of this is just, especially as men, we're not taught to be emotional creatures, but my daughter right now is pregnant and I'm going to be a grandpa. And, there's definitely some emotion involved in that. And I just don't want to make the excuse anymore that I don't understand it. That's a cop out. So, yeah, I mean, it's been a beautiful journey. And every day I wake up, I got something to work on. And I know tomorrow when I wake up, if I draw a breath, I'll have something else. I'm a non-finished product at this point.
I don't think any of us are finished products at this point. Congratulations, though, on the soon to be grandchild. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
thank you. Yeah, excited about it.
I know we've talked in the past. That's something I've been thinking about in the future. Like, I want to be a good grandparent. I want to be around for my grandchildren, and I want to be healthy. And I want to be
Yeah,
fully present. It's
yeah.
just it's an incredible experience. I'm happy for you.
Yeah, and part of it is just it kind of gives you some aim and fluid and perspective of like, it's our responsibility to be good memories for people. I was blessed with a great dad, and so I have all these wonderful memories, and I know I'm not going to be around forever, but it's my responsibility to create these great memories with all these people around me until I can't anymore. So, yeah, again, life happens. I don't know when the last time we've talked, but, in the last 90 days, I've said goodbye to my dad. My son's going to deploy to the Middle East, and my daughter's having our first, great grandson. So, grandson. So, life happens quick, and if you don't stay on top of this stuff, man, it'll get on top of you real quick. So, I'm real proud that you're doing these kind of segments that allow folks like you and I to have these open conversations about the importance of mental health and really the repercussions it has on our family if we don't get it taken care of.
Yeah, I mean it's an important subject to me, and I'm trying to find the best avenue to get health, wellness out to the masses. And to me, the best way to do it is through a podcast. That's what I'm good at.
Yeah, yeah,
But I want to jump back into something really quick. You said it's difficult for individual men to talk about their mental health, and it kind of kicked me back to a year and a half ago when we applied for the retreat, and my wife and I got accepted. I remember looking at my wife and going, I don't really want to go do this. I'm like, I don't want. I use this term very lightly now, but at the time it meant something to me. Trauma drama. I'm like, I don't want to go deal with trauma drama. So we decided to go. I'm like, well, I'll go. I'm gonna get a free trip up into the mountains and have a good time for a week. I'll go to whatever classes you guys make me go to, and then I'll get out of here. But I will say, after the full week of being there, it changed my life. Probably one of the first times in my life I was ever able to open up about things that I didn't know were buried deep down inside me. And from that day that I left the retreat, my life, I changed it completely. I'm going after my dreams. I'm changing how I talk to myself. I'm changing how I think about myself. And we'll get into this later, but any veterans out there, if you're listening and you're on the fence whether you want to do something like this, I highly recommend it. It's not just trauma drama. It's helping you become someone that you didn't know you could be. And so, if you could kind of dive into a little bit, what is the Veterans Retreat? And I mean, quick overview. We don't have to go into
yeah.
deep details, but yeah, talk a little bit about the retreat. What happens and how do people get involved?
So the first thing I will say is the thing that I hear most often is retreat may be a bad way of naming it. Because it is, and Jack, you'll say this, it's intensive. If you came through for a week of holding hands, kumbaya, you're going to get loved up on. But the reality is you came to do some work and you're going to have to face it. So it's pressure driven. And the reason why is, PTSD, we all hit this switch under stress. And you basically replicate that situation, but you control the responses on the opposite side of that to things that you want. So in the mornings we do 4 hours of education. That's kind of teach you what post-traumatic stress is, what are the truths and the lies about it. We work a lot on communication, shame, just a wide variety of topics, moral injury, military sexual trauma, you name it, we touch it that week. So 4 hours of education in the mornings. In the afternoon, they get 3 breakout sessions. One's always counseling or life coaching, and then the other 2 will be mixed in modalities like acupuncture, massage, yoga, energy work, Reiki. I mean, you name it. We do an equine day. And so really, if you show up and you're kind of struggling, I will first start by saying it's not going to erase your past. But what we're shooting for is post-traumatic growth. How do we get past these things that we struggle with and use them to kind of shape us into this more resilient person. And so what happens is within about a 7.5 day period, you'll go from coming in and struggling to leaving and having an understanding of who you are, what your triggers are and what you need to manage, what you want to grow into, and 82 different tools to go with you. And so, all of those won't stick with you, but if there's 10 to 12 that work for you, then when you leave out that door, you got a chance, and then the rest is just all your own personal decisions about how much you want to stick with it. So, I call it a reset. And that's to me what it is. There's a lot of information on our program. There was a Lisa Ling, Oprah Winfrey Neck special, and then there was a couple of us on a PBS documentary. So there's plenty of information to check out. What I usually tell people is if regular counseling is not working for you, then we're a great solution. Because I think you will understand this, and most of your listeners will get it. There's very few things you will ever mention or name in life that you were good at that you spent 1 hour a week doing, and your mental health won't be any different. You know what I mean? So it'll be a combination of things that you're using to take care of yourself. And I don't mean to be putting this what I call process paralysis. There comes a point where you need to quit poking through your past and just move forward, But taking a good deep dive into that, looking at the pieces you need, moving forward with what serves you and letting go of the rest that doesn't. And so, I've been graced with the opportunity of doing this for 10 years. I think I've been a part of 43, 44 retreats, somewhere in there. And all I can simply say is if the person comes in and they want to change, there's no way that it can't happen. And I know for a lot of people, you're thinking, oh, yeah, I get it, dude. You're blowing smoke at me. But, 86% of the folks that come through our program have more than a 10-point reduction. And that's, 10-point reduction is considered clinically significant and normally takes 3 to 6 months to get there with a VA. So, and then the other thing I'd mention, Jack, that makes it important is community. I mean, you see the way people show up for us. When you show up day one till you leave in your car, you don't think that you're there by yourself. You understand that the community cares about you. There's an invested interest in you and your family's service, that it wasn't for nothing, and that they are a part of the repair process. And I think you don't get that by going to your typical VA facility. You can walk out those doors and still think Joe Blow civilian doesn't give a darn about you. So I think it's that connection, that learning of tools and management process, hope, and then the new mission statement of like, what are you going to do when you leave here? You're a great example of that, Jack. When people leave the doors, they've got an opportunity to go right back to the same miserable lives they had or to keep building on it. And, you're a prime example. You left with that fire in your belly and you're doing something about it. And that's what our program's intended to do.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, you get tools, lots of tools. Some tools are for, some people, some tools are not. You might hear something like Reiki or yoga and you hear those terms and, it might scare some people off. Please don't be scared off by those things. If it's not for you when you go there, that's fine. There's another tool that will be. I know one of the most simple tools that you taught me always sticks in my head every single day. Is the circle of control. What's in my control, what's outside of my control. Sounds simple enough to say, but now I've internalized it. And so when I start getting overwhelmed and I start feeling like, oh my God, everything's out of control. I stop, what do I have control over right now? I mean, honestly, for this podcast, I for several days, I've been overthinking it and all that stuff. So this morning, I'm like, what do I have control over? And I just sat down and I wrote out, that intro script that I read but it calmed me down. I have control over that. I did it. Now let's move on. So the circle of control was a tool that I learned that impacted my life massively.
And that's just like a mental reminder of like, I choose me. Because we're talking about control, and as soon as you make the decision not to move on that and to change your energy into something that's productive, then you've already acted on it. You've already imposed your will. So, I can't take credit for that.
I know that.
Stuff.
I know that.
What was that? That's Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People there. But that one hits center to me, like right now, my son's about to deploy and, me being an Army dude, I know what the Middle East can have in store for you. But the reality is, I can start prepping care packages, talk to him, let him know what he needs to be thinking about. But other than that, he's a grown man and there's not a lot I can do for him. It's time to serve his country, right? So I'm sure I will be doing that circle of influence, circle of concern a whole lot until he gets his butt back home.
I can imagine. So I'm going to jump into a couple other little things that we can kind of different modalities that we went through, and a couple that stuck in my mind that I hadn't experienced before and were really enjoyable. So one of the memories I have of the retreat, we went out. It was a day, I think it was a morning. We went out to the ranch, a horse ranch, and you went out into the corral with this horse, and basically built a trust with this horse. Like you two were communicating. You were able to move the horse around the corral and show us when the horse would get nervous if you were in certain spots. And then after that, we ended up going out on a nice horse ride through the mountains. And it was an incredible experience because I've only ridden horses like twice before that, and they were, in Costa Rica, and I think it was in Mexico somewhere. I did when I was a kid, but this experience made me pay much more attention to the horse and trying to learn to bond with it once you started teaching us that we communicate with the horse. So I would love to learn a little bit more about equine therapy, how you got into it, and why you think it's important.
Yeah, so let me give the caveat. I am not an equine therapist, but I love horses. I've been around them. And so we do an equine day. And, I was raised around horses, and I do also wildlife rescue. And so they speak their own unique language. I'll tell you, if you walk up to an injured golden eagle and you don't learn its language pretty quick, you can get your butt tore up with some talons, or, with a horse, you can get kicked or hurt. I've just always had a special bond with them. And then when I started teaching, it just became this, natural analogy for our relationships with our spouses or coworkers or partners, you name it. And so I sort of, when I do the class, I give this analogy of the horse and I don't speak the same language, but if I understand how it communicates and I communicate with it on its level, then we can both accomplish some things together that we wouldn't be able to do if I was simply trying to push a 1,200-pound animal. And I usually, kind of equate that to with our relationships, we don't have the same language, especially for veterans. We'll go in and say, blah, 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 blah. And our wife's like, yeah, right, dude. Like a ham sandwich. I'm not making you a darn thing, right? And so, one-way communication or even better than that, some people don't communicate at all. They shut down when they're stressed out. And so understanding where that person is, how they communicate, and it's not necessarily about what you need to say, it's about how they need to hear it. You start reverse engineering that conversation to say, I really want change in this relationship. In order for that to happen, she's going to have to hear me. So, maybe I don't attack her. Maybe I know if I approach her from this standpoint and in this space, that's when she's most receptive. That's when the message needs to be delivered. And then next thing you know, you're not pushing this. I'm not calling my wife a 1,200-pound animal, so don't get me in trouble here. But that's what it's like, right?
Uh-huh.
So, that's kind of the analogy I use is like, much like nature teaches us, we all have this different way that we approach communicating with things. And our responsibility as humans, and I think veterans forget this, is we're so used to sometimes being able to get stuff accomplished without even speaking a word. I mean, some of us come from environments where, this right here without ever saying anything. And then now it's like you want me to say 500 words to express how I feel and
ain't happening.
Like, okay, yeah, it's like what's the happy medium to where you're honored and I'm honored, and the reality is we just simply accomplish this. And so I think the horses are a great way to do that. The other thing I will say about horses is when you're dealing with trauma, especially early childhood trauma, it affects your ability to communicate, your linguistic system. And so if you've had, a traumatic experience at the age of 3 and somebody comes up and says, hey, what happened to you? You can't verbalize that, right? So when you're 40 years old, you still can't verbalize it. But that doesn't mean that it's not there and it can't be released. And animals are a wonderful way of connecting. Whether it's autistic children I've seen work with horses, to veterans that are nonverbal when they're stressed. They just allow you to release and communicate without having to come up with all these words for something that is beyond words in the first place. All you have to do is sit with them and be, you know? And that's a beautiful thing. So that's always my favorite day to teach, and it's the one where I feel like I'm not teaching is on Thursdays. And I think the greatest honor you can have is to take a horse that's had some problems and professionals can't get anywhere with them, and they bring them in, and you're just a good human being, and within 10-15 minutes you got the horse doing whatever you want it to do. It's just trust, you know what I mean? And also it's a good energetic mirror. If I go out there and I'm in a crazy place, the horse will be too. So it allows me to go out there and connect and to know where my energy's at and what I need to change, and reminds me that I need to communicate with something on its level, that the whole world's not about me. And so I think it's just a beautiful way, and especially after you've been in a classroom for 3 straight days pounding the books, right? It just becomes a great break to get out in nature and say, man, for 3 days I've kind of figured out what I've been through, where I'm at, but now I want to take a pause, get in nature, just absorb all of this and figure out where I'm going. So yeah, I love it. It's great, and I'm glad that you enjoyed it. It's usually every once in a while we'll have somebody that's really scared of horses, and if you're lucky, you get them at least grooming or something like that. But yeah, they're wonderful. The Red River Stables is where we actually go during retreat. So if anybody's ever in Red River, the Red River Stables there's a guy named Dirk Neal. I'm not plugging a business, but I say that because he has good, safe horses, and I've never had an accident with any veteran on a trail ride with him. So if you're in Red River and you're wanting to do a horse ride, he's the only show in town anyways. All I'm telling you is you're in safe hands. Go check it out and make a connection with nature for the day.
Awesome. Yeah, they were wonderful. The horses were great. Kind of funny you mentioned my wife's deathly afraid of the horses, and so to get her up on one, I can't remember. I think it was called Peanut was the horse or something like that. It was not happy to have her at first because she was so scared. But once she calmed down, it was a fun ride. Yep. But at first, first it was a little challenging. But it was fun.
Yeah, I mean, they know, and if you say I'm not sure about this, they'll show you behavior that agrees with it. That's what they do.
I'll be here. Yeah. I don't want you here either.
Yeah. Let's agree to agree. Yeah.
So the next one I want to kind of dive into a little bit. And at first, this one kind of irritated me, and I'm going to be honest. I like instructions. I like to know what I'm doing. And there was it was an evening event where there was a bunch of masks. There were these white masks of faces. They were blank, had nothing on them. They were put on the table, and there's a bunch of paint and other stuff on the table. And you guys just told us, hey, go paint these masks. I'm like, for what? What are we going to do with this? And so, but you know what? I was all in at that point. I'm like, I'll give it a try. So I sat down, started, trying to think of what I wanted to put on my mask. Started painting for a little while, looking around the table, noticed what everybody else was doing. Then I started actually learning some stuff about myself while I was going through the process. I started noticing that I had to have mine perfect. I had to have it well thought out. I had to have meaning. And I know deep down in my psyche, I have this longing to want to be the best at everything I do. So I'm like, mine's got to be better than everybody else's. I didn't say that out loud, but it's something that was going through me. I went through a whole rush of thoughts and emotions while I'm going through this, looking at other people, some people just slapping paint on there. Other people, just little minimalistic, little, flowers or whatever they're putting on there. Just a whole range of possibilities was being done at the table. And I just found it extremely interesting how everybody did it differently. And I learned something about myself just painting a mask. I enjoyed it. When did you get into doing that and, using that as a modality? And why do you think it's important?
Well, so we've always had art. The masks were actually based off of a National Geographic edition that they did. It was called Vets with Masks. And so you can look that up. It's been several years ago, but that's kind of where we got the idea from it. And then the mask actually is transitioned. So I think, and again, you've already thrown it out that you've went through, so I'm not breaking any laws here. But we used to actually do it where the outside was the first part that you painted, and that's what you show the world, and then the inside was the post-traumatic stress side that you keep hidden from the world. And obviously it takes a long time to dry, so we ended up splitting the mask in half. And so now the way that we do it is one half is PTSD, and one half is post-traumatic growth. And so we've been doing that for probably 6 or 7 years. I'll tell you, Jack, I'm one of those guys that when I first got into art, it was beyond frustrating. I hated it, which really irritated me because as a kid, I really loved it. So the first thing is that told me that at some point somebody put this message in my ear that I wasn't allowed to like it anymore. Because I remember being the kid with Scooby-Doo coloring book and, give me some clay and leave me alone. And, art was my favorite class. And then you become a, 14, 15-year-old kid and it's like, or in the military as Sergeant First Class Podell, if you would have walked in, to my hooch in Iraq and saw me with crayons in my hand, they probably would have referred me to mental health, right? So,
unless you're a Marine, you'd probably be eating them. I was a Marine, I can say that.
You can, truth. So yeah, I moved up here and I have a seizure disorder, so shaking is I can't paint anymore. But I got into art, and a couple of people encouraged me to join the studio tour, and I did that. Next thing you know, it just kind of took off. And so now any art that I make, I donate to nonprofit organizations for fundraising purposes. And I think you hit it on the head. For me, the number one thing that I knew that I had to work on when I left the mask was my inability to not be perfect. Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I mean,
yep.
I realized that about myself going through that exercise.
Yep. So for me, that exercise, very frustrating at first too. And then I think the whole point of that exercise the first time was like just allowing myself permission to be and express myself, and that there actually wasn't any wrong answer. I've probably done, 20 masks in my time here. Every one of them has been different because every time I showed up in a different headspace with different people working on different things. And so, the mask can be a good tool. The art is great. And again, it goes back to that. How do we get some stuff out that we can't talk about? Counseling and stuff is great, man. It's a wonderful tool when it's the right tool. But if you can't talk, you can't leave that stuff just pitted up. It's got to flow somewhere. And art is just a real subtle way of you'll start to get in the zone next thing you know, and you'll look down and go, oh, man, what am I looking at and what do I got to work on, right? This don't look right. So, I really like it because it gets into a different side of the brain. And then the other thing that, amazes me about it is when you're doing art, you're inviting in creativity. And creativity always makes the problem-solving process better. So it's to me, it's a wonderful activity. And so, we do that, I think, on Tuesday nights. And again, it's like y'all come in and the instructions I give you is very, very limited, right?
It's very vague, yeah.
It's very vague, but there's a reason behind that. And it's because, it's not my job to have people show up and me tell them where you're supposed to go. Or it's my job to help you. And so we just, again, that is an activity where we create the conditions in the container for you to do some self-exploration and discovery, and whatever comes out of that, if you want to work on it, great. We got some tools to work on it.
That's awesome. I'm going to jump into another thing here really quickly. I know you spend a lot of time working for the center, but you also have your own wellness business, you and your wife. You want to talk about that a little bit? What do you do? What do you offer? How'd you get into it?
Well, it's something that we kind of transitioned to. I'm a disabled veteran, so I can't work full time. But that doesn't mean that, I don't have something to contribute to the world, right? And so the other piece is, for veterans, I enjoy helping veterans, but there's people in my community that are suffering, and I can't go to the supermarket and turn my shoulder to them. So part of that was just when we're not doing this, how do we continue serving humanity? And so my wife, Janice, who's a beautiful soul, when we moved up here, she started taking Reiki. That was her and I, without getting into a whole long episode on that, that was my tool when I came. I didn't understand it. I left not understanding it, but I knew I couldn't deny that it was something I really enjoyed. And so when we moved back up, we decided to take Reiki 1. And she stayed through it for 8 years until she became a Reiki master. And so We do a lot of internal life coaching. So I'm a certified professional life coach. I do that. She also does her piece, which is energy work and stuff like that. And so really what we're just trying to be is an asset and a resource for our community. I'm probably not the answer every time, and I'm well aware of that, but I'm also very tied into resources, so shame on me if I don't make some time for the other folks and say, hey, what do you need? I may not have it, but I'll help you find it. And so up here, again, the local school district is something that we try to help with because we live in a pretty remote location up here in Angel Fire. First responders is another area where veterans can really get involved in. I kind of see them as, you know, peers. I mean, there are peers. Stressful environment, the stress that we have and post traumatic stress. I mean, you see it in the firehouses and the police offices. So those are definitely areas that we can assist in too. So, again, it's just we're here to help anybody really. And so that's all it is we run our own, business where we basically take what we do for veterans and we try to give it away to other people who maybe don't qualify, maybe don't always have money. And it's been really good because the clients that we've had have been, school age kids that are in difficult home situations to folks that are end of life, end of life, trying to make some life decisions and go out the way they want to go out with dignity, And so all those people deserve life coaching, right? And so to me, it's just a better opportunity to expand my reach to help other people. So yeah, that's what we do. We've been doing that for probably about 3 or 4 years. It's mainly her doing it a lot because I stay pretty busy with the veteran stuff. But yeah, it's been a good addition.
Yeah, you're always on the go.
Yeah.
For listeners out there, Marcus is on every corner of this state at some point during a month, so he is everywhere.
For a teleporter to get built, man, it'll cut me down on some commuting time. But yeah, I've got some folks that travel with me, and and the reality is a lot of times if we don't have anything on the schedule and it's a veteran organization that calls us, we're there. Just this last week, I mean, Wednesday I was at the Capitol, no, excuse me, Tuesday was at the Capitol. Wednesday I headed down to Fort Stanton and spent some time with the organization down there that does horse-based activities and stuff for a couple of days trying to help them. So yeah, I mean, some days you feel like you're crash landing from one thing into the other, but I think the beautiful thing is everything that I am involved in at this point is all stuff that I can hang my hat on and know that if tomorrow's my last day, I made some kind of difference.
I love that.
I'm not chasing a dollar. It's not monetary that this kingdom I'm trying to build. So I am very fortunate that I'm plugged into a situation where I want to help people, and every day I get to wake up feeling good that I get to do that. So
it's incredible. And I love how you say, yes, you help veterans, but you also help your community. The skills and resources that you have belong to everyone, Yeah. I want to jump back into the Reiki really quick. I'm not going to go into depth on it, but for those of you who have never experienced Reiki, his wife truly is a Reiki master. Did not believe in it when I walked into that room. When I walked out, I experienced something I can never explain. So it was an incredible experience. And I'm glad you guys offer that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's been kind of interesting. Like much like you guys, I don't tell people this a lot, but when I left Bell Helicopter, I went to massage therapy school. And the only reason I went to massage therapy school was to kind of get over my touch issues. I didn't like to be touched, but I got kids and a wife. Yeah, but you got a wife and kids that deserve it, and just because it wasn't taught to you isn't an excuse to not give it to them. And so I actually went to massage therapy school to get my back worked on, after jumping out of airplanes for a long time and to get over my touch issues. And so my wife, has always had the benefit of Marcus working on her, so her doing Reiki, it's just like we can take care of each other in the home. And I would really encourage anybody that's listening to put your mental health in your own hands and stack the deck by investing in some of this stuff and learning how to do it so you can service your own family and then go call for backup when you need it. So I'm grateful that my wife stuck with it. And ironically, she served for a long time as our executive director before I took over as president, and she left that position. But she quietly worked on that in the background, and eventually we had a Reiki practitioner that couldn't come, and she slid into that. And after that, people were like, "Nope, you're not going anywhere." So she loves it, and as a person who also, I'm not telling any part of her story she doesn't want me to. The woman's got PTSD just like I do, So that's the other thing is, a lot of us veterans who carry some of these burdens, our family members do too, right? And so for her, it became a way of not only servicing veterans, but really a way for her to find herself again. And I think it's been absolutely, as a husband, it has been an absolute honor when you can watch your spouse grow out of something that would destroy most people. So if you're watching Janice, I'm incredibly proud of you, woman.
That's awesome. Yeah, and Janice is an amazing person. I not going to jump into it in too much detail there, but for those of you, if you ever get a chance to meet her, she is an incredible human being. So we're going to go ahead and jump into the end here. If anyone's interested in supporting the center, I know I can't remember exactly how much it costs to put a couple through, but I know it costs quite a bit of money, and you get a lot of the money through donations and grants and different funding. So how can people help either monetarily or non-monetarily uh, the center?
Sure. So first, I will say this: we are somewhat funded. We have a behavioral health contract with the state of New Mexico, and that covers about 28 veterans. So we pay about $5,200 per couple. And a lot of people are like, "That's expensive," and it is because we're specialized care. We're not a place that's meant to drag you along for years and years and years. The reality is we also bring in the spouse and treat them equally. So, to do what we do, it costs about $5,200 per couple. We do get some grant assistance. Also, New Mexico Department of Veteran Services provided us with a small grant this year as well for part of the Governor's Challenge for Suicide Awareness and Prevention. But other than that, we fundraise, we grind, and all the money that we raise goes towards bringing our out-of-state brothers and sisters in here. So you can go on our website. It's National Veterans Wellness and Healing Center's homepage, www.veteranswellnessandhealing.org. There's a donate button right on there. There's also our Facebook page is a great place to look, or just give us a call. My personal number is 575 252 3738. Anybody can reach out to me at any point in time after this if they're suffering or something like that. Our main line, if you're wanting to make a donation or inquire about program stuff, would be 575-377-5236. And those are all great numbers to call if you're interested in doing that. And then the last piece is we have been doing this for about 17 years, and believe it or not, we're expanding. And so this summer, we're actually going to be starting the process of building a permanent facility up here in Angel Fire. We have 18 acres. It's located directly across from the nation's first Vietnam Veterans Memorial. It's right next to the new half-scale replica wall. We were awarded $1.2 million from the New Mexico legislature to start this process. And so this summer, our game plan is to start putting cabins up there. And once we get those cabins set, our plan is we will service veteran couples, like retreat-wise, like you're talking about, throughout the year periodically. But then the remainder of that year, we want to open that space up to military, veteran, and first responder families to simply come up to this beautiful Enchanted Circle area and make memories without having to go bankrupt to do it. There's tons of great stuff to do up in this area, and the reality is for some folks, maybe you don't need a retreat, but you do need 5 days with the wife and the kids, smelling the pine and watching the elk roam, and we're going to have that for you too. So the respite care is a big piece of what we're trying to grow into, because we want to run retreats, but the reality is there's a whole lot of other people that we think we can put a smile on their face to. So get involved, whether it's with our organization or another organization. What I will say is this: if veterans really want to fix veterans' mental health, then it's going to require veterans to be involved. You know what I mean? And so as we grow and as we, experience this growth, I think, and I know this is a strong word, Jack, but I feel this way. I think we are obligated. We're obligated to reach back into that fire and pull our brothers and sisters up, So, I'm not asking anybody to risk or jeopardize their own mental health, but, for my brothers and sisters out there that are listening, if you are in a good place and you're not helping someone, I need you to know that there's a whole lot more that you were meant to be doing down here on this earth. Get out there in your community, plug yourself in, and when you see somebody roaming around lost, understand you are the person that's supposed to be giving them a compass check that day, and quit passing it to the next guy. If we can start hitting these 50-meter targets in front of us and love up on people, maybe we can knock that number down, But there's no excuse for the way that we've been doing some of these veterans. And again, I would challenge everybody out there, just whether it's a veteran or a member of your community, put your arms around somebody. It'll make them feel good. It'll make you feel good. But ask for permission before you do it.
I couldn't agree more. That's beautifully, beautifully put. I've decided to dedicate my life to trying to help people as well, and I attribute, a lot of that to meeting you guys. And that's my philosophy now as well. If I can do something, I'm going to. Well, Marcus,
Yeah. I will say one last thing, and again, this is for the people that are thinking about getting help. I'm going to ask 3 questions, and if you answer no to any of those 3 questions, it's okay, but it means you got some work to be done. And I would ask you to have the courage to do that work, because there's a better life out there waiting for you if you're willing to dig for it. And that's, are you living the life that you want to live? Do you have the relationships that you want to have? And are you being the person that you want to be, despite all the things that life has thrown at you? And if you can answer no to any of those questions, then give us a call up here in Angel Fire and we'll help you find some of the answers. You don't have to walk around lost anymore, especially when there's answers out there. So don't commit to a mediocre life. Every one of you should live a life filled with joy and abundance. You fought for it. You agreed to bleed for it. Some of you did bleed for it. And our brothers and sisters, some of them didn't return so that we could live this life. Don't throw it away. Make it count for something.
Well, if you're interested in learning more or reaching out, I'm going to have the information in the description section on this podcast. So the numbers that you mentioned, the website, any other resources that I might put in there, check out the description. If you guys, if you want to learn more, you want to reach out, it'll be there. Marcus, I want to thank you so much for your time and trusting to be on my podcast for the first episode. It takes a lot of guts, man.
Man. Yeah, it's easy money, Jack. I've already told you I'd take a bullet for you, man, and I'm proud of you. I genuinely mean that. Again, somebody helped me, and every day I wake up just trying to pay it forward. And I think that the greatest thing in the world is when I see my brothers and sisters out there doing it too. So again, just hats off for you for not being asleep at the wheel, for waking up and doing what you're doing, because I know who you are, and I know the kind of man you are, and I know your wife, and I know you guys are what we would call combat multipliers in this earth, So I look forward to all the good that you're doing, and, if you need anything from me, I'm always a phone call away, bub.
Well, that wraps up our episode. I just want to say thank you to my listeners. Don't forget to subscribe to the New Mexico Fit Life podcast, and follow the NVHWC, New Mexico Fit Life podcast, and me on social media. Everything is going to be down in the description, so you can check that out later. But again, I appreciate your time, Marcus. And for my listeners, hopefully you'll come back in 2 weeks for the next episode, because I have a lot more incredible guests lined up, a bunch of incredible guests lined up. I did not finish this podcast off so great.
You did great, buddy. First one's in the books.
It's in the books.
It's called growth.
This is how you learn, right? This is how you learn. All right. Well,
nobody ever said growth was pretty, my friend.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it, Marcus, and you enjoy the rest of your day.
All right, buddy. Tell your wife I said hi.
I will. All right. Take care. You too.
All right, bye.